Welcome to an all-new episode of the True Crime Never Sleeps show. I'm your host, as always, Larry Leese. On this week, we continue our series, The Zodiac Files, with Episode 2, Lake Herman Road Murders. Before we do that, give us your thoughts on the Zodiac Killer, and anything we got wrong or got right on this episode, let me know in the comments. And with that, let's dive into today's episode. Imagine it's a crisp California night in the winter of 1968. The moon hangs low over the rolling hills, its pale glow barely slicing through a blanket of fog. Down a lonely two-lane stretch called Lake Herman Road, a young couple parks beneath a single flickering lamppost, seeking a few stolen moments of privacy. They're oblivious to the fact that surveillance cameras don't exist yet, cell phones are decades away, and the world is asleep behind closed doors. In less than a minute, gunshots will echo through the trees, shattering their innocence and sending shockwaves through a community that believed it was safe behind suburban fences. Just 7 months later, another couple, hoping for a holiday fireworks display, will find themselves ambushed by the same unseen menace. 2 attacks, one ending in double tragedy, the other leaving one survivor clinging to life. Usher in a new era of fear, uncertainty, and obsession. This is where the Zodiac's first strikes begin. Late December in Solano County carries a unique chill, not just from the winter fog that drips the valleys each night, but from a collective sense of complacent security among towns that had, until then, tasted violence only in headlines from San Francisco. By 1968, the region was a patchwork of suburban calm and rural isolation. Vallejo's tidy neighborhoods where families tucked in TV dinners by 10 p.m., Beniциa's quiet, antique-lined streets, and Napa Valley's rolling vineyards, busy with autumn harvests but quiet under winter skies. None of these places anticipated the arrival of a predator so stealthy that he would slip through their rosy facades, striking first on a desolate lover's lane and then in a crowded park. Episode 1 walked us through the Bay Area's late 60s, hippie anthems fading from San Francisco's concert halls, highways rumbling with commuters, and local law enforcement agencies stretched thin across miles of farmland and suburban sprawl. By the time December drew its veil across Lake Herman Road, a dangerous convergence of geography, culture, and institutional unpreparedness had formed a perfect stage for tragedy. Patrol cars rumbled past sporadically, deputies twirled their mustaches back in the sheriff's office, and families back home locked doors, assuming their greatest risk lay in drunk drivers or theft. That assumption was about to be shattered. In this episode, we plunge into the opening acts of the Zodiac saga, the December 20th, 1968, local Herman Road murders that killed two teenagers, 17-year-old Betty Lou Jensen and 16-year-old David Faraday, and the July 4th ambush at Blue Rock Springs Park that left 18-year-old Michael Magoo gravely wounded and 22-year-old Darlene Farron dead. We're going to examine the procedural missteps, fragmented jurisdictions, limited forensics, and communication breakdowns that allowed this killer to vanish as quickly as he struck. By the end of the episode, you'll see how 2 seemingly isolated shootings wove into a pattern that gave rise to one of history's most infamous unsolved serial killer mysteries. On December 20th, 1968, Lake Herman Road wore its usual indistinctness like a cloak. A narrow 2-lane blacktop hugged a hillside 5 miles north of Vallejo, winding past groves of eucalyptus and clusters of oak until it faded into a faint memory of grapevines near Napa. Only a single dim streetlight marked a gravel turnout known locally as Cougar Point. For years, couples looking for privacy, especially teenagers, pulled off there to escape the watchful eyes of their parents. That night, the air sat cold and still, heavy with a light drizzle that made the road slick and the hillside misty. A few minutes past 11 p.m., a black and white patrol car from the Solano County Sheriff's Office rolled by, cruiser lights reflecting off muddy ditches. Deputy George Branahan clicked his radio. All quiet on Lake Herman Road so far. It was a statement of fact, but one that ominously foreshadowed the violence about to erupt. Just hours earlier, the Jensen and Faraday families had carried on with routine. Betty Lou Jensen, a junior at Vallejo High School, baked cookies with her mom, dusting flour across the kitchen counter. A freshman herself at the same high school, David Faraday spent the afternoon listening to the AM radio in his Mustang, a stack of records from the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, waiting to be played at home. Both teenagers were looking forward to spending a quiet Friday evening covertly parked at Lake Herman Road, talking about school, music, and what the future might hold. Neither anticipated how swiftly normalcy could fracture. Meanwhile, within Solano County's law enforcement apparatus, no sense of foreboding stirred. Detectives at the sheriff's office fielded a handful of calls. Reports of livestock theft near Rockville, a minor scuffle outside a Glen Cove bar, and 2 separate DUIs on Highway 12. Sergeant David Slate, a 12-year-old veteran with a reputation for meticulous crime scene documentation, sipped lukewarm coffee behind his desk, sorting through paperwork for a midweek arrest. The department's homicide unit, with only 2 dedicated detectives, worked mostly cold cases and routine investigations. The double homicide sounded like a plot twist from a Pulp Fiction novel rather than a possibility on their own turf. In this environment, foggy roads, sleepy deputies, and trusting families, the stage was set for a killer to make his first move. Lake Herman Road, December 20th, 1968. A lover's lane turns lethal. It was just before 11 p.m. when 17-year-old Betty Lou and her 16-year-old boyfriend, David Faraday, cruised up Lake Herman Road in his pale blue 1960 Rambler station wagon, its engine humming against the hush of the night. Earlier that evening, they'd grabbed sodas at Kent's Brown Derby in Vallejo, laughed at inside jokes, and then headed out, wanting a few stolen moments away from prying eyes. Classic rock from KHJ radio crooned through the station wagon speaker as they parked at Cougar Point, their taillights fading into the mist. They rolled down the windows, the damp air pressing strangely close to their faces. They joked about upcoming school dances. David reached for a small handheld tape recorder, planning to capture the sound of Betty's laughter echoing against the hills. Then silence. At precisely 11:12 p.m., a single shot popped through the stillness, so loud and suddenly that owls must have taken flight in the surrounding groves. According to the 911 transcript, a frightened motorist called in gunfire repeated, someone shouting, sounds like a kid screaming. A second shot followed less than a minute later, echoing off the hills and making broken branches tremble. By the time dispatcher's voice crackled across the radio to Deputy Branahan, shots fired on Lake Herman Road near mile marker 3. The Rambler's dome light lay shattered, shards of glass glinting on the wet asphalt. The deputy and his partner, Rusty Graff, gunned their cruiser through the bends, tires skipping on damp asphalt. Graff flicked on the spotlight as they neared the gravel turnout. In the beam, they first noticed Betty Lou's body, kneeling beside the Rambler, knees pressed against the cold gravel, her arms folded across David's chest. He lay face down in a widening pool of dark blood, feet pointing towards the black top as though he had simply collapsed in mid-breath. Their eyes, when officers knelt to check, stared, unseeing at a swirl of fog drifting between them and the hills. Graff radioed dispatch. 2 down. It's bad. They were barely 10 minutes into their shift. A routine patrol gone grimly awry. That first officer on the scene, Graff recalled later, felt a knot in his stomach tighten as he saw how young the victims looked, saying they could have been my nephew and niece. Slate, who arrived minutes later after being summoned from his desk, noted every detail: the empty vodka bottle half buried in mud beneath the Rambler's front passenger tire, a torn scrap of paper on the floorboard bearing the embossed logo of Vallejo High School, and 2 pristine leaf imprints on the gravel, likely dropped by passing deer before the shooting. Those observations became crucial when investigators realized there was no sign of a struggle inside the car. The couple had likely not seen their assailant until it was too late. At first glance, investigators thought the killer may have been a stranger harboring a personal grudge. The time of death was estimated between 11 to 11:05 p.m. A window confirmed by autopsy reports that pinpointed 2 bullet wounds to the chest, close together, .22 long rifle caliber. That particular ammunition was common among suburban gun owners, but who owned a .22 and was willing to scout Lover's Lane for victims? No shells littered the ground next to the Rambler. Instead, they lay farther off where the shooter must have stood, hidden by fog and brush. That invisibility gave the killer the crucial advantage to fade silently away before officers could pinpoint any direction. Witnesses emerged soon after. Two young couples driving home from a nearby convenience store recalled hearing shots and seeing a moving figure step into the spotlight's glare before vanishing into the darkness. A third witness, an older man, returning from a late-night fishing trip, told detectives he saw a lone man in dark clothing duck behind a bumper, then sprint southeast towards a service road access that led to American Canyon. Yet that account remained unverified, as the area's brushy terrain offered myriad of hiding spots. When police searched by foot the next morning, they found only a solitary boot print, size 9 but partial, the heel smudged by mud. They collected it, sealed it in a paper evidence bag, and hoped for comparison. But without a suspect, the print remained an orphan in the investigation. As dawn crept over the vineyards, families in Vallejo woke to somber news. At St. Vincent Ferrer Church, parishioners paused mid-hymn when Officer Davana entered to announce the double homicide. Candlelight services planned for that evening were canceled, and instead a tearful vigil formed on the church's steps. Mothers clutching infants and teenage siblings, hugging one another for comfort. Local radio snippets, barely a minute long, blurted the headlines. 2 Vallejo teens slain at Lover's Lane. That stark phrasing made it sound impersonal. 2 casualties in a Lover's Lane, as though they had slipped off a curving cliff. In reality, the victims possessed names, dreams, families, stories abruptly severed by a gunman unseen. Within hours, the photos were plastered across front pages. Their school pictures, Betty's warm smile and David's mischievous grin, looked hauntingly out of place beside crime scene photos. Vallejo High's counselor, Miss August, found herself providing grief session to first period of classes. Fear-streaked teens scribbling notes in their notebooks, trying to process the sudden loss of peers they knew from math class and Friday night football games. Principal Briggs convened a school assembly that afternoon, urging students to remain calm and watch out for one another. But that effort did little to quell the anxiety. Rumors spread that anyone parking alone on a dark road was asking for trouble, prompting parents to reinforce earlier curfews and remind teens to stick to well-lit areas. The summer of '69 rolls in, along with growing whispers. In the months following Lake Herman Road, life around Vallejo tried to inch back towards normal. The solitary streetlight at Cougar Point remained dim and flickering, a silent witness to ongoing unease. On clear nights, riders on horseback passed the turnout, spooked by local tales of a shooter in the hills. Radio DJs occasionally paused their music releases to mention that deputies still patrolled Lake Herman Road from dusk until dawn, hoping to deter anyone who might try to revive the tragedy. Those patrols, however, achieved a little beyond boosting a sense of false security. Deputies seldom caught anything unusual. Weekend curfews tightened. Teenagers returning from parties at local bowling alleys found their parents parked in driveways, waiting to double-check their shoes for grass stains. Jukebox tunes at Glen Cove's Diner shifted from carefree Beach Boy harmonies to more somber fare, such as I Heard It Through the Grapevine, took on a darker connotation when played late at night. Politically, 1969 emerged as a year of paradox. The Vietnam War still raged overseas, pulling away resources and attention from local law enforcement budgets. In Vallejo, calls for a new police substation in the northeast quadrant went unanswered. The city council argued that crime rates had dipped back to normal. Meanwhile, on June 20th, 1969, the Apollo 11 mission launched from Cape Kennedy, and residents across the Bay Area paused to watch the first moonwalk. That sense of collective wonder contrasted sharply with the gnawing fear that someone or something lurked in nearby woods, waiting for the next chance to strike. And then, Blue Rock Springs Park, July 4th, 1969. Holiday fireworks and horror. On a warm Independence Day evening, July 4th, 1969, Blue Rock Springs Park, a sprawling public recreation area just north of Vallejo, buzzed with 4th of July festivities. Families pinched off bits of red, white, and blue ribbon to decorate picnic tables. Children darted between trailers rigged with fireworks supplies. A band set up wooden folding chairs for a 9 p.m. musical performance that promised patriotic anthems and jazz standards. The park's eastern corner, where a small pond glimmered under overhead floodlights, served as a popular spot for teenagers eager to watch the fireworks display over the Benicia Martinez Bridge. That vantage point offered a breathtaking panorama. Columbia oil platforms glowing as distant torch fire, the Carquinez Strait shimmering downstream, and the bay's inlets rippling into the night breeze. On that evening, though, Blue Rock Springs would become ground zero for horror. 18-year-old Michael Magoo and his girlfriend, 22-year-old Darlene Farron, cruised into the park in Michael's cream-colored 1960 Corvair. They wove through gravel roads until they spotted a vacant area near the pond. Darlene, working as a hostess at Wagon Wheel Restaurant in North Vallejo, wore a cheerful polka dot dress, her dark hair tied back. Michael, a student at Napa Valley College, wore a leather jacket over a button-down shirt. His mind preoccupied with college courses, but content to spend an evening with Darlene. They parked facing east, waiting for other couples to arrive, happy to talk about nothing in particular. Fog hovered near the water's edge, making distant headlights look like wandering fireflies. At approximately 11:15 p.m., a series of rapid pops, reports describe them as 5 quick shots, exploded in the night. Darlene twisted toward Michael, a thin shaft of moonlight illuminating her features for a split second before blood pooled under her coat. Michael felt searing pain in his face. A bullet had shattered his left cheek, knocking out several teeth and fracturing his jaw. He stumbled out of the Corvair, hands covering his face as he collapsed to the ground. Meanwhile, Darlene slumped over the passenger side, her polka dot dress soaked red along the left side. Shock screams pierced the air, mingling with the sudden crackle of small explosives, fireworks igniting in the distance, creating an unsettling counterpoint to the violence unfolding just yards away. Unlike Lake Herman Road, this crime scene offered at least one living witness. Michael's voice, though hoarse and bleeding, managed to tell police what he saw. A man in a black, military-style jacket, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that shaded most of his face. The assailant seemed calm, methodical. He raised his arm to fire, step by step, as though practicing a strange ritual. In these few blurry moments, Michael noted the man's approximate height, around 5'10", and estimated his build as a medium, not too thin, not too heavy. That description would later resurface in police bulletin and composite sketches that tried to pin down the killer's identity. After firing, the shooter vanished behind a grove of trees, illuminated for only a second longer than the earlier shots. Local deputies arrived within 4 minutes. Remarkable response time for rural Vallejo, alerted by frantic calls that the dispatcher labeled gunshots and assault possible murder. Officer Dave Kelly, driving a 1968 Dodge Polara patrol car, spotted the Corvair's hazard lights blinking beside the pond. He went to assist Michael, briskly rushing across loose gravel despite the threat of a second shooter. Kelly dragged Michael's bleeding form away from the passenger side, easing him onto the grass. Darlene, already unresponsive, slumped over the seat, her breathing shallow. Another unit arrived to lift her into an ambulance, but she died en route to the Marin General Hospital in Greenbrae. Her final words, lost to the night. Witnesses surfaced quickly. 16-year-old Pamela, parked 10 car lengths away with her 2 friends, ran towards the scene at the sound of gunfire, just in time to see the killer's silhouette disappear behind a grove. She told detectives she saw a glint, perhaps a reflection off a watch band, before the figure merged with the darkness. Another couple, parked even farther back, heard the pops and stumbled toward the pond, reaching Michael's side as he pressed a bloody hand to his face. The band, playing patriotic tunes in a makeshift gazebo several hundred feet away, paused mid-song, crowd members scattering when they realized someone was under fire. Fireworks began erupting overhead, flares of red, green, and momentarily illuminated the scene, making it look at once surreal and apocalyptic. By 11:30 p.m., Solano County's forensic team arrived. A 6-member unit, armed with 2 small flashlights, 4 standard cameras, and fingerprint kits. Slade himself joined the effort, lifting Michael's fingerprints despite heavy smears of blood, hoping they would match something in any existing database. though the reality of 1969 meant that many prints on file came from people arrested for misdemeanors or petty thefts, not violent crimes. The team found two .22 shell casings on the ground near the Corvair's rear bumper, each marked 22 LR, stamped into the side, identical caliber to the Lake Herman Road shooting. That finding flipped a switch. Investigators started to ask, could the same killer be responsible for that double execution 6 months earlier? The forensic team submitted those two casings along with the 22 casings from Lake Herman Road to the California Department of Justice's Firearms Laboratory in Sacramento. Under a microscope, technicians matched the rifling patterns. Both sets shared identical land and groove characteristics. 6 rifling grooves, right twist, consistent striation marks, indicating they were fired from the same make and model of rifle, likely a Winchester or Harrington and Richardson 22. That revelation electrified investigators. What had started as 2 isolated tragedies now formed a possible pattern. A single perpetrator wielding a .22 rifle, attacking couples parked in remote locations, as if following some grim ritual. Detective Sergeant Charles Hitt, assigned to the Vallejo Police Department's new Major Crime Task Force, pored over case files from both scenes. He noted uncanny similarities in both incidents. The victims were casually parked to the driver's side of their vehicles, as though seeking maximum protection from headlights. In both instances, the assailant fired from the passenger's side, crouching to avoid the main beams, suggesting tactical knowledge of ballistics and concealment. In both cases, he used a .22 LR, uncommon for street hits, since most criminals favored larger calibers for stopping power. That firearm choice implied a shooter comfortable with a low-recoil rifle, one who perhaps practiced regularly, maybe outdoors near rural property. Yet, differences existed too. At Lake Herman Road, the killer's sparks alighted in complete darkness. No fireworks, no crowds to confuse the noise. At Blue Rock Springs, a bustling Independence Day celebration raged just a few hundred feet away. That yearly chaos provided cover, making witnesses' observations fragmented. Bursts of gunfire sounded like artillery for a moment, then vanishing among the booms and crackles of firecrackers. That environment underscored the calculated nature of the attack. The Zodiac, as he would soon dub himself, deliberately chose a crowded holiday setting to divert attention, to mask gunshots under fireworks thunder, and then slipped away before police could cordon the area. In the weeks after July 4th, 1969, Vallejo's residents awoke to a dawning horror. This was no random act of violence. A killer lurked among them, an invisible predator with a .22 rifle, stalking couples on isolated county roads and in public parks. Newspapers seized on the connection immediately. Front-page headlines screamed, "Same gun suspected in 2 Vallejo attacks. Coded killer on the loose. And are Lover Lanes no longer safe?" Teachers at Vallejo High found students more jittery than ever, avoiding parking near tree lines and glaring at passing cars. Parents who once allowed curfews at 10 now insisted their kids be home by sundown. Church bulletins went from advertising potlucks to urging families to keep prayer in their hearts in these perilous times. Hospitalized for nearly a month at Marin General, Michael McGew hovered between life and death after the barrage of bullets tore through his jaw and cheek. Through blood-soaked bandages, he recounted to officers what he could recall about that July night. Though amnesia clouded parts of his memory, he offered details more vivid than any dead-eye witness. The assailant's age range, mid-20s, approximate build, and a distinct slang in his speech, a ZZ, which Michael mumbled faintly, as though forced from unconscious lips. The doctors had to reposition metal plates in his jaw multiple times, and though he eventually learned to talk again, his voice returned hoarse and thin, each word scratched into a notepad by a police stenographer. His initial statements included a reference to a dark-colored jacket with a specific insignia, 3 concentric circles embroidered on the left breast. He later retracted that detail, claiming confusion under shock, but detectives noted it anyway. That sketchy emblem would resurface when Zodiac sent his taunting letters to 3 major Bay Area newspapers in August. Letters bearing the same 3-circle symbol, crossed by a plus sign, Whether those letters came from Magoo's account or inspired from photographs of crime scene investigation paintings, a similar symbol on highway signs nearby remained unclear. What mattered was that by mid-August 1969, communities across the Bay Area realized the murderer was no petty crook. He was a showman, a taunter, a figure who sought attention as badly as he sought to terrorize. Magoo's surviving status also meant that investigators could glean psychological insights, what law enforcement then called offender profiling. The FBI's Behavioral Science Unit in Quantico, Virginia, offered to assist. Agents reviewed the crime scene photos and Magoo's account, pinning that the killer was likely a loner, living close enough to scout kill sites under cover of familiarity with local roads. That intelligence shift, scrutinizing a killer's psyche rather than just fingerprint matches, represented a pivotal evolution in policing. It also planted seeds of fear. Someone among them possessed not just a gun, but the audacity to toy with both couples and authorities. An audacity that would only grow bolder. While the pattern seemed clear, bringing definitive charges proved elusive. Solano County's detectives faced a quagmire of jurisdictional overlaps. Lake Herman Road fell under Solano Sheriff's Patrol, while Blue Rock Springs lay within Vallejo's city limits. When evidence emerged like shell casings and witness statements, cooperation between agencies was patchy. Vallejo PD stored Blue Rock Springs evidence in a locked vault downtown, while the sheriff's office archived Lake Herman Road files in an aging steel cabinet in Fairfield. It took weeks to reconcile ballistic data when lab reports arrived. One lab handled the .22 LR rifling analysis. Another examined latent fingerprints lifted off the Corvair dashboard. Those duplications and delays gave the Zodiac precious time to watch helicopters hover over the park, to gauge how police cordoned off crime scenes, and to plan his next move. Limited forensic technology of 1969 also hamstrung detectives. At Blue Rock Springs, the rifle's barrel lugged a slim layer of mantle from fired rounds, while fugitive fibers drifting off Darlene's dress held the faintest promise of a DNA precursor. Though back then, DNA wasn't tested in criminal cases. Autopsy reports listed Darlene's cause of death as massive hemorrhaging from a .22 LR gunshot entering the left-sided chest. For Michael, surgeons rejoiced that the bullet didn't sever his artery, but his fractured skull meant lengthy rehab and permanent scarring. Without cameras mounted on squad cars, police cruisers relied on the quick-draw instinct of deputies who patrolled roads, on gut instinct rather than real-time video. That primitive gap left investigators chasing phantom leads through grainy memory rather than clear evidence. As dawn broke after the Lake Herman murders, residents of Vallejo, Benicia, and Napa awoke to the same sinking revelation. An unseen predator prowled their roads. People who once lauded the Bay Area's sense of freedom now eyed their neighbors with suspicion. Churches hosted emergency town hall meetings to address rampant fear. At Redeemer Lutheran Church in Vallejo, Pastor Carl Stevens delivered a campaign of reassurance. Let us not succumb to hysteria. We must look out for one another, drive safely, and report any odd behavior. His words, though well-intentioned, met a thorn of skepticism. Community members whispered that trusting signs and hugs wasn't enough when a shooter slipped through foggy hills. A convenience store owner on Glen Cove posted a handwritten sign at his counter saying, quote, "Call police if you see cars parked at dead of night." Firefighters at Station 56 offered free reflective vests to joggers, an odd perk given that joggers rarely roam beyond city limits then, but in an attempt to instill a sense of proactive safety. Area high schools held assemblies where vice principals sternly warned students, if you plan to meet your girl or boyfriend at night, don't go to isolated roads. That advisory, however, hit awkwardly. Many students pointed out that they had no other places to gather after curfew. No 24-hour diners, no community centers open past midnight. Blue Rock Springs Park's July 4th massacre only stifled those anxieties. Even a holiday celebration couldn't guarantee protection. Rumors proliferated like wildfire. One rumor claimed that the shooter targeted couples with stolen license plates. Another alleged he stalked a young woman working at the Vallejo Medical Center on weekends, waiting for them to drive home alone. Some said he was a Vietnam veteran, conditioned by kill drills, now disillusioned and angling for revenge. Others wondered if hippie runaways from San Francisco had banded into a rogue cell. Such unsubstantiated theories only deepened the climate of fear, like an itch beneath the skin that refused to go away. Police, trying to stem the tide of panic, issued a series of statements clarifying established facts. We have no evidence linking the crimes to local veterans, and no stolen plates patterns have emerged. Yet the disclaimers got lost amid sensational headlines and playground gossip. In the weeks following the Blue Rock Springs attack, Solano County Sheriff's Office reached out to the California Department of Justice multiple times for updates on ballistic matches. Each update confirmed that the 22 casings from both crime scenes bore identical rifling patterns, leaving little doubt that the same weapon had fired at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. That correlation spurred the formation of a multi-agency task force, the Major Crime Unit, combining personnel from the Vallejo PD, Solano Sheriff's Office, and Napa Sheriff's Office. Yet, even with combined manpower, their efforts faced uphill battles. By mid-August 1969, the killer, signing himself Zodiac, sent letters to the Vallejo Times, Herald, San Francisco Chronicle, and San Francisco Examiner. Those letters took credit for the 2 Lake Herman Road murders and the Blue Rock Springs shooting, demanding that newspapers print his coded messages or face further attacks, which we're going to dive deeper into those coded messages in a future episode. After the cipher letters arrived at Vallejo PD, Chief Jack Eberling convened a task force meeting at the department's cramped downtown headquarters. Around a linoleum-covered table, representatives from Solano Sheriff's Office, Napa Sheriff's Office, and the FBI's San Francisco Field Office gathered. Detectives scrawled notes on legal pads as Eberling outlined the scope, shared ballistic data, coordinated night patrols on isolated roads, double-checked license plate registrations for recent purchases of 22 rifles, and that meeting produced the first truly coordinated response to the emerging Zodiac case. Deputies in unmarked cars joined uniformed officers in marked patrol vehicles, aiming to appear both visible and covert, intending to thwart any return visit by the killer. They established rotating surveillance posts at Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs Park, and Lake Berryessa, though staffing these posts meant pulling deputies from other critical duties, nearly grinding some recidivist theft investigations to a halt. Detectives also introduced a rudimentary offender profile, a male in his mid-20s to mid-30s, familiar with rural roads, comfortable firing a .22 LR rifle in darkness, possibly living or working in Solano County. FBI agents shared techniques gleaned from other serial killer investigations, import the case into a centralized index, expedite ballistic comparisons, and record all incoming tips in a standardized log. While technology lagged, no digital databases yet existed. This collaboration laid the groundwork for a modern multi-agency task force, helping both to expedite data sharing and to avoid finger-pointing over jurisdictional turf. By the end of summer 1969, the killer's image had transcended mere suspicion. He became a mythic figure, appearing in whispered allusions as the Zodiac, a name he'd chosen himself. Each time police read his letters on the evening news, the phrase, "I am the Zodiac," thundered through homes, making chores, washing dishes, ironing pants feel fraught with danger. The code in his first cipher, once cracked, revealed a chilling message, amplifying fear in ways no double murder could alone. That first cipher was cracked by amateur cryptographers from the Vallejo Rotary Club. Ostensibly began with, "I like killing people because it's so much fun," a line that made the killer into a monstrous caricature, half journalistic sensation, half urban legend. As the last echoes of gunfire faded at Blue Rock Springs, a new menace began to take shape. One written in ink instead of gunpowder. Within days, Bay Area newspapers found themselves holding sealed envelopes addressed by someone calling himself Zodiac. These letters threatened further violence unless editors published his messages exactly as penned. When the first cryptogram arrived at the Chronicle on August 1st, 1969, no one realized it concealed a manifesto so chilling it would send ripples of dread through every neighborhood, from crowded city streets to remote country roads, or county roads. In our next episode, we'll peel back the layers of these taunting letters and watch as local codebreakers race against time to crack a 408-symbol puzzle. We'll take a look how their breakthrough decoding a message about collecting slaves for the afterlife shifted the Zodiac from mysterious shooter to public terror. You'll see how the killer's twisted sense of showmanship played out in ink, forcing families to bolt doors earlier and students to question if safety ever truly existed. Keep your doors locked and your eyes open, because in our next installment, the Zodiac steps out of the shadows onto the front pages, daring anyone to decipher his dark intentions. Episode 3 is coming up next week, and it starts with a code no one could ignore. And before we take off, we'd like to thank our sponsor, NordVPN. Let me ask you something real quick. When was the last time you thought about your online privacy? To be fair, it took me a couple of years to actually even think about my privacy. I mean, you really think about it, because if you're using public Wi-Fi, streaming your favorite shows, or even just browsing social media, you could be leaving that digital door wide open for anybody to walk through. NordVPN is the fastest, most reliable VPN out there, and it's built to actually protect you. It hides your IP address, encrypts your internet traffic, and keeps nosy hackers or greedy advertisers from tracking what you do online. Here's the best part. It works across all your devices, your phone, your laptop, tablet, even your smart TV. So whether you're working from home, at the airport, or just binge watching from the couch, NordVPN keeps you safe and anonymous with just one click. And right now, NordVPN is offering an exclusive deal for our listeners and viewers. Head over in the link in the description to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 extra months absolutely free. 4 bonus months just for signing up through our link. And the best part, it's risk-free. NordVPN has a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if it's not for you, no worries. You can cancel anytime. So don't wait until your info gets leaked or your favorite show gets geo-blocked. Protect your privacy, unlock your content, and browse with confidence. And of course, if you like our video, give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, hit the bell notification button to be notified of future videos, and if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TCNS, or just scan the QR code right there. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time.